Now, one of the results, Chris, we need to talk about, and actually it's the first result we need to talk about, and not because of the tennis, but because of a specific incident that I don't actually think has ever happened before in tennis, or if it has, listeners, please let us know. Chile versus Belgium. Now, Belgium won this tie 3-1, so they are through. But the big talking point of this was in the singles match between Cristian Garin and Zizou Bergs, because they had a little bit of an altercation when they were on the changeover at a very pivotal time in the match that resulted, it resulted in Cristian Garin refusing to play because he got knocked over by his opponent, Zizou Bergs. And the umpire wasn't really handling any of it. And it ultimately ended up in a default, essentially.
I mean, it was like nothing I've seen before, Joel. I mean, we both watched it and I've watched various angles of it. And I cannot understand how in the rule book this actually is allowed and whether this is sort of a weird sort of incident that sort of falls between the cracks of the rules, because we've seen Djokovic, hit a ball without intention and it obviously hit an official at the US Open. He was disqualified. This is a player actively basically KOing, like knocking over Cristian Garin, Zizou Bergs, and whether there is intent or not, you can't floor your opponent just because you were excited. And when you talk about fault, I just think it's so unbelievably strange when he has actual injuries. It was to his face. This is a non-contact sport. So I just think they need to make their mind up on how they talk about this from the rule perspective. And the official word, and this was taken from the umpire who was umpiring this match. And the thing that I also find, quite strange about this is that when it comes down to, Carlos Ramos, he's got so much experience. I was not expecting as an umpire that he would be someone who I think would get something so wrong, in my opinion. He said it was an accident. I'm not sure that actually should have too much bearing, because that has not had bearing in previous things that we've seen.
Yeah.
The protocol was that they first take care of the injured player with a medical team. And then what happened was they judged that he was fit to play. So despite being knocked over and suffering injuries to his face, they decided he was fit to play still. So apparently you're able to injure your opponent, but you're not able to injure a member of the crowd or spectators, which seems very strange. And then because the doctor, who was apparently a neutral person, said he could play, the fact that he did not play meant that there were points penalties that were given. And that meant that because he didn't play after a certain period of time, it then became 1 point, it became one game, and then it became the match because it was 6-5 in the third set. So I'm so shocked by this.
It was quite a delicate moment as well. I was very surprised, regardless of what the umpire and the referee was saying. I was very surprised that Garin kind of didn't continue, but I sort of can understand it at the same time. Is there a case of this is just one of those things that, as I say, I can't ever remember this happening. So regardless of how experienced someone is, like a Carlos Ramos, there's not many examples I'm imagining he's got in his brain to kind of reference to know what the kind of correct outcome here. And is it something maybe that, the ITF maybe need to look at in terms of updating or introducing new rules in terms of what happens in these moments? Because it really felt like a kind of what happens next kind of situation.
It really did. And especially when it's for your country, it just feels like it's particularly unfortunate because, I get that people are hyped up during this, but there is no excuse for the fact that, and then the Belgium team have put out a statement saying they've got the full support to Zizou and the Belgium team and all of this sort of thing. And I just think it's nuts that this has happened and crazy that it ended in this sort of way, because it doesn't matter if someone is a nice person. If you've inflicted a physical injury on your opponent, whether intentional or not, if you hit a ball down the other end of the court and on a serve and they turned their back and it hit them pretty hard, you could get disqualified for things like that, I'm pretty sure. So I did not like this. I do not like all the people trying to protect different outcomes. And I don't really like the fact that it's put on Garin that he didn't choose to continue, because I would feel pretty rattled by the fact that I didn't see this coming. I have been knocked over. It is a really tight point in the match. And it just makes you feel very uncomfortable in the environment because this has happened, whether he knew it was intentional or not. I've never seen anything like it, but I mean, would you have given it a disqualification? And do you think there is actually something in this appeal that's going to go in?
Mm, I'm not sure. I sort of understand it from a point of view like it doesn't matter if it's an accident, and we've seen with kind of like with tennis ball hitting incidents, like it doesn't matter if it hits someone in the crowd, it really should be a default. So on that kind of line of argument, when it comes to, it's not a tennis ball, it's your opponent, arguably an even worse situation, then I do think there are grounds for it to be a default.
And it's a body blow, which is the thing
And
that's so
yeah,
crazy. It's like a
yeah.
physical contact as opposed to like,
That's what I feel like is separate from other incidents I've seen where, just simply like two players are in the zone, they're not really thinking about their opponent kind of walking to the net. And also sometimes like the gap between the net post and the chair umpire is not that wide. So
no.
that sometimes you both go for it at the same time, and maybe those situations are right. But as you said, it felt like there was a little bit more needle and a little bit more intent. And, even though like you can understand it deep in the third, playing for your country, it just felt like it had stepped over a mark and boiled over, and it didn't really have a place on the tennis court.
And if you have that level of energy and you're hyped up in that way and you're not able to control it, I believe that's on you. I believe that's on Bergs to control his emotions to the point that he isn't actually putting other people at risk and danger. So I think tensions are high during these things, but I would like a proper apology to be done to Cristian Garin about this because I think he's been completely wronged in this situation. And I just think it's not what this sort of tennis tournament, the Davis Cup, your country's competing is about. And we had a couple of other incidents, didn't we? Another one that we'll talk about was Arthur Fils playing for France against Brazil. This was against Siegfried Wild, who was not happy with him. And it's more umpire sort of decisions that are a bit confusing because Fils did go to sort of like tube is what it's called when you aim a shot at your opponent who's at the net. Wild got out of the way of it, and the umpire said it touched his racket. So this ended up with quite an aggressive scene at the end of the match. And I think that Wild felt that Fils should have said, "Oh, I know that didn't hit your racket." But Fils just said to the umpire, this is on the umpire's decision. It's not on me. So where are we standing on this? Like, are the umpires getting it wrong? Would you call it? Should the player be the person saying it? Because with Iga, when she had the double bounce, no one was really giving her too much of a hard time around that.
No, yeah, I think that I think the umpires need more support in terms of technology and to help make those decisions. I think it's really hard in Davis Cup where you are playing for your country, and that might kind of make your decision making actually a little bit more biased and a little bit more, like trying to maybe be a bit sneaky and get away with things. So I just think that, if we've got the technology and it's there to be used, should the umpires have these moments so that we can have this technology so that they can able to make these decisions so it doesn't fall on the players, because it feels like that is another sort of tension point that could boil over and lead to potentially altercations that could have been avoided.
Well, that would have been avoided, I guess, at the US Open, because if there was no shot hit, then it would mean that the review could happen. Because with Emma Navarro, because she played the next point, even though the ball had double bounced, she wasn't able to actually call for the review. Whereas this could be 100% a review because either he did hit it or he didn't hit it. And then you could definitely check that. But there are these different rules from Grand Slams to the Tour to Davis Cup. It isn't all the same. So with this one, it's just a shame when it's not energy that's fueled into a positive vibe. It actually sort of left a little bit of a bitter taste in a lot of the players and maybe the supporters' mouths around this, especially if you're from Chile or maybe from Brazil.